The American Revolution, a clash of empires, a struggle for liberty that defied expectations. Those scrappy colonists throwing off the yoke of the world's greatest power. Preposterous, wasn't it? Yet it happened. The British, masters of war, lost their prized colonies on the other side of the Atlantic. This wasn't just a military defeat. Nations don't lose wars by mere accident. Something deeper happened in those years between 1775 and 1783. A series of choices of forces that sealed the fate of an empire and birthed a nation. Today, we're not just recounting history. This is a story of how the mighty can stumble and of the ideas that can reshape the world. At the heart of this story is a stubborn monarch, George III, a man determined to reassert his authority over a restless people thousands of miles away. These weren't just distant subjects, they were Britons, subjects who felt increasingly disenfranchised. Taxes without representation, restrictions on trade and westward expansion. London's policies felt less like governance and more like the heavy hand of a distant overlord. On the other side of the ocean, a new generation of leaders was emerging. Bold men like Washington, Franklin, Adams, Jefferson. They weren't simply rebels, they were visionaries. Men shaped by Enlightenment ideals, men who dared to believe in a nation founded on liberty, on audacious principles of self-government. It wasn't just about tea taxes and slogans, this was a clash of worldviews. The entrenched power of an unyielding monarchy versus the aspirations of a people hungry for a voice in their own destiny. The British Empire, vast and seemingly invincible, versus this defiant upstart experiment called America. Could this loose collection of colonies truly become a nation? Could farmers and merchants stand against the finest army in the world? The stakes were immense. Not just for those caught in the struggle, but for the course of history itself. Would the principles of liberty and self-determination ignite a flame that could spread beyond those American shores? The American Revolution was not a textbook war, a neat campaign with decisive battles. It was a messy, protracted conflict where the British, masters of European warfare, found themselves outfoxed, outmaneuvered, and ultimately worn down by the realities of a rebellion unfolding across a vast and unfamiliar continent. From the forests of New England to the swamps of the Carolinas, the colonists refused to be pinned down. They had no vast armies, but they didn't need them. Leaders like Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, Daniel Morgan, and the daring Ethan Allen and his Green Mountain Boys turned every forest, every river, into a potential battlefield. British columns, expecting to crush rebels in open battle, found themselves harassed, their supply trains raided, their morale chipped away. This was a war of attrition before the British fully understood the term. Thousands of miles from home, the British struggled with the most mundane, keeping their army fed and equipped. Early victories like the taking of New York and Philadelphia proved hollow. Each city captured became another logistical nightmare. Meanwhile, the colonists, though often ill-supplied themselves, could draw on at least some local support. This wasn't a war fought solely on battlefields, but in every farmhouse and village that might offer a meal or safe haven to rebel troops. Yet it was the spirit of the Continental Army, more so than any specific tactic, that ultimately frustrated the British. While plagued by desertion and shortages, Washington, through sheer will and shrewd tactics, kept a core force intact. They endured the brutal winter at Valley Forge, emerging a tougher, more disciplined army thanks to the training of men like the Prussian Baron von Steuben. The British could win battles but not extinguish this determined flicker of rebellion. And the British were not fighting alone. Their old enemy, France, saw an opportunity to avenge its humiliation in the 7 Years' War. After the American victory at Saratoga in 1777, where General Horatio Gates forced an entire British army to surrender, France pledged open support. It wasn't just the supplies or even the troops under Rochambeau, but the French fleet commanded by Admiral de Grasse that proved decisive. By blockading the Chesapeake, the French cut off Cornwallis's escape route, leading to the final surrender at Yorktown in October 1781. Ultimately, the British lost not because of a single tactical blunder, but by underestimating the scale of the challenge. They sought to subdue a rebellion as if it were merely a border skirmish, failing to adapt to an enemy that dissolved into the landscape, that fought for an idea rather than a king, and that had found a potent ally eager to see the mighty British Empire humbled. The echoes of the American Revolution didn't fade with Cornwallis's surrender. The principles enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, those radical notions of self-governance, inalienable rights, had taken root. The world watched, not always with approval, as this fledgling nation grappled with the messy realities of its founding ideals. This wasn't a war that truly ended. America became a vast, unfinished experiment, constantly wrestling with the contradictions between those lofty principles and the realities of slavery, Native American displacement, and the complexities of power. Questions fought over on blood-soaked battlefields remain debated and contested to this very day. And the world took notice. The French Revolution, less than a decade later, drew inspiration from America, though it descended into bloody chaos. From Latin American liberators to 20th century anti-colonial movements, the American Revolution showed that even the mightiest empire could be toppled by the will of its people. So did the British simply lose a war, or did they lose something far more profound? Did the scrappy rebels across the Atlantic not just win their freedom, but ignite a flame of revolution that has flickered, sometimes dimly, sometimes blazingly, ever since? It's a question that makes this conflict more than just a chapter in history books, but a living, breathing debate that continues to shape the world we live in today. If you enjoyed this exploration of a war that changed history, please like and subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the past. And let us know in the comments, what other historical events would you like to see examined?